Let's talk about leeches. Unpopular opinion, but I quite like leeches. I think that they are very cool creatures and don't deserve all of the hate that they get. So leeches are in the same phylum as earthworms, the annelids. However, they are not in the same other classification, so they're somewhat related to earthworms, but not really the same thing. Most of them are freshwater, and that's where most people obtain leeches when they get stuck to them, but there are also marine leeches found in saltwater and even terrestrial leeches that are found on land, albeit in moist environments, but on land nonetheless. Leeches are classified as ectoparasites, meaning external parasites, so they go on the outside of their host's bodies as opposed to internal ones that are inside. And they suck blood from their hosts, which is what they are the most well known for. A fact that I think is very cool about leeches is that they have almost always 3 jaws as opposed to the normal 2 jaws, and most of them are arranged in this triangle or Y shape. Now, there are a few species of leeches that do have the 2 jaws that are arranged more in a V shape, but most of them are in this Y shape. And they use that to attach to and then feed off of their hosts. And they actually have 2 suckers on them, one on each end, one for more attachment and one for feeding. And leeches have a very special saliva that is similar in function to that of a vampire bat, in which it has both anticoagulants and anesthetic. That's the bitch. So the saliva functions to basically stop blood clotting so it flows more easily, as well as blocking pain signals, so the animal host doesn't realize that the leech is actually attached to them, and so the leech can just get its fill without being noticed by the host. Which is why most people, when they get leeches, they don't notice until they either see it or somebody else sees it, at which point people start to freak out about it. And leeches do have some pretty significant medical purposes as well. Historically, they were used in bloodletting, which is its own entire thing, but they were used quite a lot in ancient medicine, and some of it was pretty on the money, to be honest. So, as I mentioned before, the saliva is very special, and so proteins from the saliva have been isolated and used for both their anticoagulant and anesthetic effects to develop drugs based on those proteins that can actually be used for those purposes. But even the leeches themselves do still have places in modern medicine, which most people don't actually know about. They are used occasionally in small-scale surgery, such as facial reconstruction and finger reattachment after accidental amputation, most of the time, to help stimulate the blood flow and help maintain the circulation, because once circulation stops, then that's when the areas start to turn necrotic, which we don't want. So especially the anticoagulant properties help stimulate circulation to keep blood flowing, which is good. They just apply the leeches and have at her. They've also occasionally been used in cases of blood clots and in some osteoarthritis cases. Not super commonly, but they still have been used. So, bottom line, they're not that bad. Most of the time, bites from leeches are not threatening at all. They're more scary than anything, and the only times where it's really dangerous is if there's a lot of them and they cause excessive bleeding, or if somebody gets an allergic reaction, which is very rare but still happens, usually due to the proteins in the leech saliva. There have been also cases of them transmitting pathogens such as viruses or bacteria, but again, that is very, very rare, and you're unlikely to catch something from a leech bite. They're also relatively easy to remove. They are related to earthworms, and they do also not like salt, similar to earthworms, so just by sprinkling a bit of salt on them, you will get them to very easily detach, or if you don't have salt, I've heard of people like sliding like a credit card or ID underneath them to like pull the suckers out of the skin. Wouldn't recommend doing that unless you absolutely have to, just because it can cause tearing, but that's also a thing. Most of the time, just salt or soy sauce or something, you can pretty easily remove a leech, so they're really not that bad unless you have an allergic reaction from them. So I think they don't deserve all of the hate and misinformation about them.